Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on our Spring Data JPA tutorial series. In this video we're going to be talking about how we can share some properties between our entities, and we are also going to have a look at how we can generate the Hibernate metamodel and how we can actually use it, so what it is and how we can use it. But before we get into any of that, I'm going to address an issue that we had in the previous video, which regards this generated value. So this strategy that we had here, we had issues when we would be using the identity type, and I figured out the reason for that was that our type of the ID is string, and the string does not work with the identity. If we would have something like integer, then it would work with the identity type. So UID is good when we are using string. Okay, great. Now that we have that out of the way, let's start to see how we can share some entities. So, share some properties of the entities, so database entities. The reason why we would want to do that is if we would have multiple entities, we do not want to repeat ourselves. So we don't want to create the ID, add annotations and the strategy and everything. We want to do that once and then share it for all of our entities that we have them. So I'm now going to implement it. So I'm going to create a distributed entity, basically a base class that's going to be used to extend this address. And then I'm going to show you exactly what we have there. So let me implement it and then I'll guide you through the changes. So here it is, our distributed entity. I have created a new Java class within our entity package. And in this class, we have added few properties. I have extended it, so I have added the ID that we already had, but I have also extended it with two new properties like created timestamp and modified timestamp. And you can also see that this is an abstract class, which is quite important. So you cannot use this class on its own. You have to extend it somewhere else. So on our address entity, for example. And also quite important is this annotation. So it's annotated with @MappedSuperclass, basically telling Spring this is not an entity by itself, but rather collection of properties that will be used on another entity. The reason why we would want to do this is to basically not copy paste these properties all the time. Okay, so one thing that you might have noticed is that we don't have a name name property here. So the reason for that is that maybe not all of our entities will have a name, so we want to keep that separate. So I'm going to create another class exactly like this one, but just with the name property. So let me do that really fast. And here it is. So exactly the same as we had before. We have our named entity now, which actually should be an abstract class, and it's also extending the distributed entity. You can see here now that we have our name property and we have the same annotation as before. Okay, now the only thing that's left is to actually modify our address entity. The way we will do that is we are going to remove all of this, what we have here, because we don't need that anymore, and we are going to extend named entity. If we didn't have a name for an address, then we would just extend the distributed entity directly. So let me just clear out these imports. Now that we have changed our address entity, we have updated it with the new shared properties, there's one more thing that we need to do. As you can see here in the distributed entity class, we have added two properties which are not nullable, and that's modification timestamp and created timestamp. So we need to go to our service, so to our address service, and we also need to extend it. I think from previous tutorials or previous video, I have these where we add the ID. We don't actually need that, so I will get rid of that. And then I'm going to set the created timestamp, which would be just the current system time. And then I'm going to set also the modified timestamp. We can, again, call the current time millis, or we can just say address dot get created timestamp, so that we have exactly the same thing here. And now if we go to our integration test and rerun it, we should have, it should pass. So let's run it. And as you can see, our test is passing, everything is green. We can, if we wanted to, we could extend it and verify that the properties like created timestamp and modified timestamp are being set, but I'm not going to do that. If you want to, you could extend it and add it here. Okay, then for this video, there is also one more thing left to be done. So this is something that we're going to be using in the next videos, but in this one, we are going to implement it. We want to generate a Hibernate metamodel. Basically, metamodel will give you an information about all of the properties that you have on your entity. So we're going to be using this when we build some specifications. So basically some queries where we can select the data from our database. And to do that, maybe you want to say, okay, I want to select all of the addresses that have been modified since this timestamp. And to be actually able to say modified since, you could write a string that matches this property name. So you could write modified timestamp, and that's the column on which you are selecting. But then later on, you might change this name to something else, and then your query would not work until you update the name in the query. To handle that, we can use the Hibernate metamodel, which will automatically create all of these properties for us and to keep them up to date if we change them. And you just use that property directly in your query. But for now, for this video, let me show you how you can generate them, where you can place them, and then in the next videos, we are going to be actually using them. Okay, so let me implement that and I'll guide you through the changes. Okay, and here it is. So we have, if we are actually at the build Gradle, so our main build Gradle file, which you can click here and it will just jump to it if you have it opened. And then you can add, so you must add a new dependency to the Hibernate JPA model. This is the latest version that I have currently available, so I'm just using that one. And then we have a few properties basically telling this task where it will generate these classes. So you have to add these three things here, just copy paste them, and also the source code will be available, of course, so you can just use it from there. Once you have that, so this folder, you can put whatever you want. I'm just putting it in the source main generated. And now the next thing that you want is to actually refresh your Gradle dependencies. So I can show you actually, when you change something here, IntelliJ should, let me try changing a version here. Like IntelliJ should give you this button. So you just click that and it will reload all of the dependencies. But if you don't have it, you can just open up Gradle on the side and click here, and then it will reload everything. And then after you have done that, exactly the same path, there is a build task here. So running that will actually generate these files for you. So I've already run it. It runs really fast on this project. And you can see that it created in the source main generated. So same way as we specified it here, it created our three properties, our three classes of three metamodules of our entities. So if I open up, for example, the named one, you can see that it has one attribute, one property called name. So I can use this one to select by name. On the distributed, I have a couple of more, and on the address, I just have it extending the named one, and then the named one is extending the distributed one. Yeah, so as I said, we are going to be using this in the next videos, so not in this one. Now I just wanted to show you how you can generate them. If there are some questions, if something is unclear, please leave a comment down below and then I'll try to get to you. And until then, I will see you in the next video.